Good evening tonight as we come to you live from the heart of historic Havana, where history has been made yet again. The U.S. and Cuba and the first talks of this magnitude since the Cold War. We've learned the first meeting about 3.5 hours today, and tonight, as we're on the air, the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit this country in more than 30 years, now here to restore diplomatic relations. Less than 24 hours ago, the president in the State of the Union saying this year, Congress should begin the work of ending the embargo, and the Cubans here were watching. We've learned this was the first year here in Cuba they could watch the speech in its entirety. President Castro's team telling me tonight when they heard those words, it was like music to their ears. And tonight, we're apparently not the only visitors. A big mystery, the Russian spy ship that just arrived. We're asking tonight, coincidence or something more? And of course, the American cars from the 1950s. How do they keep them running here? But we begin tonight with new details inside the historic talks. Early this morning, we flew into Havana, Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. Once we arrived, we quickly learned that on the streets of Havana, it is nearly impossible to find anyone who doesn't know this is an historic moment for Cuba. But at this hour, word of the first hurdle. Cuba wants the U.S. to stop giving Cuban immigrants who reach U.S. soil special status, allowing them to stay in the U.S. The U.S. tonight vowing that will not change. We drove to find the former U.S. embassy here, stripped of its title, shut down shortly after Fidel Castro took power. Cubans, aware of the tension at the time, lining up before the embassy could close to apply for American visas. The waiting list, months long. And this is that building today. You can see the heavy security behind me, the officers on the corner here. We were here as members of the U.S. delegation arrived a short time ago because there is great hope that this will soon become the U.S. embassy again. Tonight, the images of the Americans now returning for the talks. On so many streets here, scenes frozen in time. The American cars from the 50s. When Fidel Castro took power in 1959, he shut down imports of American cars. 60,000 vintage cars still driven here. And inside them, families with new hope that their relatives in America will now visit more easily. Puedes visitar su familia. In the driver's seat, Carlos, just 25, proud to show me his car in pristine condition. Chevrolet? ¿Y qué año?
Año 55.
55. A Chevy Bel Air. As we walk down the street, the cars are everywhere. And who fixes them with no American parts in decades? The mechanics who improvise. 53. A 53 Plymouth. Mercedes-Benz. Now a Mercedes engine, and we wondered how much of the car is original. ¿Cuántas partes en este coche son original? He answers with a smile, just the body and the transmission. Hola. But it goes far beyond the cars here, the basics, the grocery stores, the shelves, far from what you see back in the U.S. Sugar, plentiful in Cuba, but most of the powdered milk, for instance, from New Zealand. Butter from Denmark. She pulls tomato juice from the shelf. This is tomato juice from Spain. 11 million people live here, on average making just $20 a month. They are still proud.
The Monte Carlo of the Americas.
More than half a century ago, Cuba was a tourist mecca, nightclubs and gambling. The vast majority of visitors, American. Now, just 90,000 American visitors a year. But they expect 1 million U.S. tourists when travel restrictions are lifted. And recently, when President Obama sat down exclusively with us, we asked, will he be among them? Will you visit Cuba in your final 2 years as president?
You know, I don't have any current plans to visit Cuba.
Not ruling it out?
Well, let's see how things evolve.